Hello, folks. Welcome back. And the hits just keep on coming for the ANC. Another friends and family only. F around and find out Friday. This story appearing in the Independent Online, the title South Africa accused of prior knowledge of the Hamas attack. What? Well, folks, bear in mind that the things I've told you about aren't simply out of the blue. For instance, now we have another effort to resurrect this bill from last year by the U.S. House Representatives to go after South Africa. Last year, it was simply to reevaluate the relationship. This year, it's 15 pages long, submitted by Representative Ronnie Jackson of Texas's 13th district, the former personal physician of President Trump in the first administration. Representative Jackson has a long list, and this goes beyond simply evaluating the relationship to actually sanctioning ANC leaders for incompetence and malfeasance and human rights abuses. Wow. This is treading now into Zimbabwe territory, what's happening in South Africa. Justin Lewis, a representative of the United Kingdom-based judicial rights group CASISA, has apparently written to Ambassador nominee Brett Bozell about what's going on in South Africa, calling for sanctions against the country. In a letter that was dated March 27th and apparently seen by the Independent Line, Lewis claimed that South Africa's legal actions against Israel are part of a broader Hamas strategy. So Israel, Hamas, South Africa, Iran. So South Africa is acting on behalf of Hamas? Well, that's not much of a stretch. And ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump's executive order didn't come out of nowhere. It wasn't because he was misinformed about what's happening to Afrikaners. It wasn't because he didn't understand South Africa. People are completely brain dead and don't realize the United States is pretty well informed on these things. There's much more below the surface that can't be disclosed because they're classified, because of the sources and methods involved in obtaining the information. Whether we're talking about the Lady R, or we're talking about Waterkloof, or we're talking about Hamas in Iran. Now, Lewis apparently is currently involved in an investigation into alleged corruption within South African banks linked to UK tax havens. Lewis asserts that the investigation aims to expose legalized, court-approved international money laundering. Now, bear in mind that South Africa is currently gray-listed because of money laundering and terrorism financing. Now, Lewis alleges that evidence exists demonstrating that the South African government itself was aware of Hamas's planned attacks before they occurred on October 7th of 2023. If this can be proved, this is unbelievably damaging to the ANC. And even if it isn't provable, even if it's just a spurious claim, this will be very much of a distraction for the South African government in the near term. Lewis claimed that elements within the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, DIRCO, actively supported Hamas' political strategy by facilitating access to the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice, which Hamas, as a non-signatory, could not access otherwise. In other words, Naledi Pandor's team worked on behalf of Hamas to get them access to the ICC, which they're not a signatory to, and the ICJ, which they're not recognized by. Wow. Now, as part of a political strategy, preparations were apparently made before the October 7th atrocity against Israel to set mechanisms in place for approaching the ICC and ICJ for protection from Israel's anticipated response. So basically what Mr. Lewis is saying here, what his allegation is that South Africa is part and parcel of the terrorist actions that took place in Israel on the 7th of October, 2023. Now, that is beyond the pale if that's true. The South African government, at least elements of it in DIRCO, actively worked knowing about the terrorist attack and helped do preemptive damage control before the event ever occurred. This is beyond the pale, folks. Now, Lewis has likened the situation to assisting a neighbor to burn his house down and then rushing to court to claim insurance protection from the insurer. Wow. Now, apparently, Lewis also in December 2024 submitted a brief to the U.S. Senate and the Congress detailing his concerns, which also shared with Greg Swenson, a chairperson of Republicans Overseas UK. So notice the date, December of 2024, when he shared that information with the U.S. government. When did Trump come after South Africa? On February 7th. After South African politicians whined about having foreign aid cut off, as if they were the only country in the world it happened to. There's a lot more going on here than meets the eye, folks. And the ANC can try to rubbish this source, and they may be right. He may be telling fairy tales. I don't know. I don't have any evidence. But the allegation is earth-shattering. We'll keep up on the story and keep you informed and either confirm or debunk it as more information becomes available. However, I will say this. What he is saying is entirely plausible. Now, Lady Pandor is a bootlicker for the Palestinians and specifically for Hamas and for Tehran. Well, what comes next? Things are not looking good for the ANC. Their ambassador's been kicked out. Their representative, their consul in Los Angeles has been kicked out. Their military attaché was due to rotate. He's out and has been replaced. Do they even have anyone other than the secretary answering the phones? Not looking good for the ANC. Not looking good. What say you, South Africa? What say you, world? These are shocking allegations and a shocking development, if true. Stay tuned. More to follow.